what really causes a person to become addicted to alcohol, drugs, let's say bad eating habits, even depression. What causes a person to end up that way? Popular belief says that the person is born that way, and certain people are just prone to become alcoholics, drug addicts, to eat bad foods all the time and ultimately end up getting onset diabetes or having a heart attack too soon, or whatever kind of process that happens there, and even depression, that person's just born that way. That's popular belief. Even what I'm about to say is completely unpopular. And who am I to say anything? Am I someone with some kind of scientific background? Absolutely not. Am I an expert on anything? Absolutely not. I'm just a guy with a YouTube channel. But I observe certain things that a lot of people aren't willing to talk about. And what I'm going to talk about right now, this is my view. This is what I see. In my almost 38 years on this planet, I've made an observation. What's an observation? I'm still learning to speak English on this planet, even though I have an English degree. Observation. I've made observations about people that struggle with addiction of alcohol, drugs, food issues, overeating, obesity, all of those things, and people who suffer from depression and those kind of thoughts. What I've noticed about all the people in this category, all these categories, is that if you talk to them a little bit, you'll find out the trauma that happened to them, or you'll get some kind of hint that some kind of trauma happened to them when they were younger, and they never sorted it out. They never dealt with it. And that is the underlying issue that causes this hole in their identity that they're trying to fill with something else. So even the alcoholic, he gets on the program, he's successful, he's sober 7 years, and during that whole 7 years, he's having to fill that hole with the program, with the process that keeps him from focusing on that. But if the alcoholic never deals with the fact that really he's got anger issues with his father because his father wasn't really around, and when he was verbally abusive and told him he'd never amount to anything, or someone was physically abused in unthinkable ways when they were young. Whatever it was, there was some kind of trauma that happened. And instead of being properly dealt with a professional, which I'm definitely not, instead of ever getting that healing, processing it, trying their best to deal with something that should never have happened to them as a child when they're still trying to sort out how to be a human being, instead of that ever happening, it never did. It was swept under the rug. And now they're leading into adulthood. And it becomes one of those things: alcohol, drugs, overeating of some kind, depression. Those things happen. I will say this: I have never, and I've met a lot of people in my life, I have never met a person who suffered from one of those things I just named that didn't have a traumatic event that I pretty easily learned about just from knowing that person. Never once. I know that the whole concept is, all right, well, some people just have the alcoholic gene, and all they need is one sip of beer and then they're addicted for life. I can agree that people can become addicted to certain things and they're more prone to those things, and everyone's got their vices. I can agree to that. That's not a problem. But ultimately, people who have that unresolved trauma in their life, they're going to be the people who end up truly diving in all the way and becoming addicts in the way that the rest of us would not. Now, I know you're thinking, wait, I get it about being addicted to alcohol or drugs, but you're saying what? Food? Okay, I guess I can get that. But what about depression? That's not being addicted. It is a matter of a mindset. Certain people, like I've had those thoughts throughout my life where I think, man, life is caving in on me. What am I going to do? And I kind of hang out there for a minute, but I eventually overcome it because I think I can't stay here forever. I need to move on. But certain people, I don't think are able to move on ultimately because of what happened to them in their past, in their childhood, that traumatic issue. And because they never learned to overcome it, they end up stuck in such a toxic thought process. I believe that's ultimately what happens with depression, along with all the other addictions. We go to a doctor, we say, help me. Give me this prescription so that I'm not addicted to these thoughts that I'm having. Make me happy. Give me happy pills. It's only masking the problem, the hole that I mentioned. It's easier to give people pills and drugs, legal drugs, than it is to help them actually solve that problem. That's what happens. So it can be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be overeating to the point that you need lap band surgery. Or simply, good old classic, become an alcoholic or become addicted to whatever drug it is that's helping you to further destroy your life. In the same way that when there's teenagers that do the cutting, ultimately they're trying to find something, anything they can do to make up for the fact that they never got to properly deal with that trauma that was so unfair that happened to them. I recognize this. People aren't talking about this. And I think part of it is that it's politically incorrect to have these conversations. To say, look, yes, there is an issue here, but what caused it? Oh, I was born that way. We were all born some kind of way. We were all born prone to have some kind of self-destructive behavior. I definitely believe that, myself and everyone included. But while many of us learn to overcome trauma, many of us don't. And I think the rest of the world is not interested in really helping those people. They would rather find some kind of distraction, like some kind of drug to make you happy. Legal drug, of course. Alcoholic, drugs. Okay, let's put you on this program to keep you out of trouble and you can help other people. But if you never dealt with what happened in your childhood, and man, and it goes back to the cliche, like on movies and TV, and they sit in that couch and the person says, tell me about your relationship with your father. And what I've found is so many people, that's ultimately what it came down to. Their father was either missing or abusive. Sometimes the mother, but often it is the father. There are very predictable situations. People aren't talking about this. I'm talking about it, but I don't think anybody's listening. I wonder if anyone's listening enough and actually agrees with me, because I feel that this is a very unpopular view. Does anybody agree with me? I mean, I know I'll get comments, people disagreeing, but does anybody actually agree with me on this? That people are trying to fill a hole that was caused by unresolved trauma when they were a youth. It never got dealt with, so they choose a vice, and that becomes the definition of who they are, and they never resolve this. Does anybody actually agree? Comments right here.